Richard, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Why does power corrupt people?
I think it's because people think that the acquisition of power is the main objective. They don't realize that power is like a tool. Same thing as with money. Power is a tool. It's a tool to achieve things for others. If it's wielded or used properly, it's about getting vaccines to people. It's about building roads. It's about building schools. That's where power is at its best. People with power in relationships, for example, completely misunderstand its appropriate use. Real power, it seems to me, is when you're so good at what you do that others want to come and work with you and serve you. That's real power, not lording it over people. Mm-hmm. But when you evince such strengths and wisdom that people want to come and join your team.
And so why do you think people seek power and influence, even influencers on social media? You were just talking about the Grammys. We were talking about the Governor General. We were talking about everyone from Epstein to Como.
Some people, I think, not everybody, but some people have like a hole inside themselves, and the adulation, and I'll use that word, the adulation that comes with power, to them is such an important thing. Maybe somewhere in their childhood they weren't respected or loved properly, and they're trying to fill a hole with this adulation. So they completely misunderstand that that's not what it's about. You know, when you join a religious community, you willingly give up a part of your freedom to something that makes sense of your life. So people will do that, but they don't realize that's what it is. It's not about, you weren't given the divine right of kings.
Yes. So then the scandals as of late, what do you make of them?
Well, a lot of it originates with the internet, where the truth goes to die, so to speak, where opinion is treated like it's fact and fact is treated like it's opinion. Right. So conspiracy theories suddenly have validity. We find ourselves debating flat earthers. Real science gets lost. So there's a bit of that to it. Also, there's a swarm. I went on the internet and made a comment after the interview with Oprah Winfrey, with Meghan and Harry, and about the race of their child. And I said, we need to know what was actually said before we can just jump in and say racism. Because, let's say you have blue eyes and your spouse has brown eyes and you're going to have a child. You'll say to each other, I wonder what color the child's eyes are going to be. You do that. That doesn't necessarily make it racism.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about that. You said your views on cancel culture are very interesting.
Okay. So we get in trouble for a Dr. Seuss book, and people start criticizing things and commenting on things when they don't look at the initial intention of the author. And the other thing is, when we learn this in literary criticism, you can't take today's mores and values and apply them to something that's hundreds of years old. You can't do that.
Yes.
You have to look at the thing in its own context. And the other thing is, everything is either good or bad. It's not that way. For example, I don't happen to agree with the politics of Bertolt Brecht or Yevgeny Yevtushenko. They're both communist-inspired writers, but I can read them and go, my goodness, it's brilliant writing. So
yes.
Not everything is good or bad.
So you compare this day and age, though, to another golden calf.
Well, yeah, I feel that.
Can you expand on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I look at some of the behavior, like, for example, we talk about the performance at the Grammy Awards this year. And it is like people are amusing themselves to death, or they don't know what they're doing, and they're bereft of leadership, bereft of a moral focus, a moral core, a moral center. And people think they know what is ethical and honest behavior, but without, at their core, some ethical standard, whether it's a religious belief, religious standards, or 10 Commandments, whatever, they're making it up as they go along.
So basically, you also say that there's no two sides can be discussed anymore. It's one side or the other. Well, it's an agenda, if you will.
Everybody suddenly is being hoisted on the petard. And even Cuomo, for example, at the moment, it's accusations.
Right.
I mean, we have a standard by which we say something's actual fact or not. Now, I know where there's smoke, there's fire. I get that.
When a story breaks, there's always a hunger for more information right away. This is a perfectly natural instinct, but it sometimes causes deep misunderstandings, because scraps of news get overshadowed by a rush to judgment, by a pre-baked narrative, and there's a risk that the narrative is the only thing that's remembered, instead of the truth that emerges slowly over time.
But by the same token, we've got to be a little slower to judge, and the kinds of talk I see from the anonymity of the internet, the anonymity, people will say things in social media that they wouldn't normally say, and they can get away with it.
And so what does the Bible say about all of this current culture, Richard?
Well, the funny thing is, it's like what reality, I think in 4 different places in each of the Gospels where Jesus says, who do they say that I am? Who am I? Who do they say I am? And that the masses don't determine what's true. It's not the mass, that's the golden calf. It's the mass doesn't determine what's true.
Amen.
Who determines what's true is truth. It's not relative truth, it's truth. But when suddenly I could make a comment on the internet like, well, we need to find out if this woman says that they were racist about her baby, we need to look at that and ask ourselves, is it racist? I teach critical thinking, and critical thinking says, let's look at the facts. But some days people will not let you look at the facts, and they take a word and they beat it to death like race. Everything's racist now. Everyone's a racist. Yeah. And the thing is, there's a true meaning to racism that gets lost. I belonged to a group once, it was a family violence committee, and a man showed up and said, you need to discuss violence against men. It's really important. And he got very, very upset. And they're all looking at me, and I looked at him and I said, well, quite frankly, there may be a problem in certain individual cases, but to focus equally and say that violence against men is the same as violence against women is to trivialize or to minimize what is violence against women. Mm-hmm. You have to put these things in perspective. Each thing has to be looked at and carefully examined. So it's not the same. We lack that discernment.
Yes, we do. Discernment is everything. Thank you, Richard.
My pleasure.